Hello guys, this is my annotations on Sonnet 29, I think, of the. It's a little bit tricky, I suppose, considering that there is Shakespearean language used, but I'm going to try and break it down as much as possible to help you guys understand and make your own notes in your anthology. So for me, the tone in this poem, I put it up here, is passionate and it's genuine, completely contrasted to not Before You Were Mine, Robert Browning's poems Porphyriad Lover. Or Farmer's Bride is more of a happy, positive poem. So you could actually put in contrast positive. So Elizabeth Barrett Browning, let's look a bit into context to make sure we're ticking that box for the exam. So it is written in the time of the Victorian era, something that you might want to make a note of, considering the fact that during the Victorian era there were different laws to what there are now, cultural expectations, such as the female was seen as the weaker gender, the man is seen as the stronger. Female would have to essentially hand themselves over fully and willingly to the man which chooses them. They did not get a choice in the matter. This poem is it's atypical, so it was unorthodox. I like using that word, orthodox or atypical, or she is an atypical female, just because throughout this poem she suggests a lot of strength or a lot of kind of obsession, but also need for controlling their relationship, not in the same way of Porphyria's lover, but wanting to essentially control the outcome and guarantee that he is going to be there for her. So this idea of her kind of wanting to overpower his love and ensure that he sticks around, in some ways it shows her strength. You could just annotate that it is technically a feminist poem, because it uses an extended metaphor. Another thing you might want to take a note of, I put it up here. She uses an extended metaphor throughout this poem of a tree and a vine that is wrapping around the tree. A similar way to what you would see if you looked around in parks and you saw ivy wrapping itself around trees. So the extended metaphor here allows Elizabeth Barrett Browning to really express her own emotions and how she personally felt. This is a personal poem to her. A few other points to make is that, she had a very, very controlling father, and he did not approve of her marriage to Robert Browning. But she still kind of had this, regardless, she still wanted to pursue the relationship, and almost, especially at the beginning, before they were married, their feelings were very much in secret. This extended metaphor, you could make a note that the fact that she, in some ways, is trying to hold the secrecy of her relationship and feelings towards Robert Browning, this extended metaphor allows her to be secretive and kind of express her emotions in a ambiguous kind of way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just read the poem with you, and you can choose to take notes. So, I think of thee, my thoughts do twine and bud about thee, as wild vines about a tree. So I'm going to stop there just because it is a block verse, or should I say it's technically a sonnet. It's got 14 lines. Sonnets are usually written about love. So I think of these straight away. This is the topic. It's clearly something which is constantly playing on their mind. It shows that the declarative shows their certainty and confidence within their feelings towards this other person. My thoughts do twine and bud about thee. So if we look at my drawing down here, imagine that she is the vine which is going about this tree. So it's saying that my thoughts do twine and bud about thee. This verb twine and going about thee, those verbs kind of suggest that she is in some ways attached to him, spiritually connected in some ways. There is the use of kind of religious kind of reference here, in the way that she is clearly spiritually tied, or feels like she wouldn't be able to let him go. About there's wild vines about a tree. So it could show that her love, the wild vines, that being the wild vines, it could be uncontrollable, something which she can't help, despite the fact of her father's disapproval of her likings to, well, what we believe is Robert Browning. It's suggested here that she is someone who is not willing to control her emotions. You could also link this idea to the fact that she's an unorthodox female, in the way that she is not controlling her emotions. She's not necessarily staying in line with the societal rules, and she's willing to kind of let herself free. Put out broad leaves, and soon there's naught to see, except the straggling green which hides the wood. Yet, O my palm tree, be it understood, I will not have my thoughts instead of thee, who art dearer, better. So palm tree here, that is religious imagery, definitely something which you want to make a reference to. So the biblical reference, palm trees are seen as extremely beautiful and useful. You could do further investigation as to what exactly and how they're useful in particular chapters of the Bible, if you would like. I do recommend that for higher ability students, but certainly we can make a reference to that being a religious or biblical reference. The fact that they use that here suggests that there is a deep connection. She almost is in awe of him, almost idolizes him in a godlike kind of sense. In that way, I suppose it kind of shows that she is a typical female at the time, because she almost needs him to compensate for, or needs him in order to kind of fix her or complete her. Be understood, I will not have my thoughts instead of thee, who art dearer, better. Here she shows confidence, because she's saying be it understood, so it shows that she's quite a controlling, confident, assertive female. She admits that this man is dearer and he is better. There's no question mark, so it shows her certainty that this person that she believes is someone who is above her, kind of linking to my thought of that religious imagery, suggesting that she sees him almost as godlike. The caesura here, it could kind of suggest the way in which she is almost excited or overwhelmed with the thoughts of her lover, and she needs to stop to think. That's what I believe anyway. Or it might show her hesitation, maybe with their own love affair, or the love which he had shared for Robert Browning. Rather instantly renew thy presence. So here I believe that there's a change in the poem. So rather instantly renew thy presence. So here she is talking about the love that she has for him, but here she decides to take an action, and she decides for she kind of has a conclusive point. And if you remember from my last videos, I believe that it's a Latin word, but it's called volta. Volta meaning that essentially it's the conclusion, or it's the eureka moment of the poem, where they start to change their tone. So the volta here, rather instantly, she goes on to say, renew thy presence. So she's actually like, you know what, I my love which I've recognised, this is the action which now I want you to take. Renew thy presence, as in come here and show yourself. As strong as a tree should, rustle thy boughs and set thy trunk all bare. So there is actually an element of sexual imagery here. And once again, since it is hidden in the format of a metaphor, it's to suggest that she is, obviously at the time during the Victorian era, it would be seen as indecent for a female to talk so sexually open towards another man, especially a man in which they had not yet married, especially even more so if their father was not approving of their actual relationship. So she's saying, renew thy presence, as in come back here, as strong as a tree should, rustle thy boughs. Boughs is that is basically a main branch of a tree. And set thy trunk all bare. So set my trunk all bare. So she's essentially saying, shake me. So she's using this kind of idea or metaphor of a tree to personify her being this trunk which she essentially wants to be shaken by this man and set all bare, all naked. So this sexual imagery you can see quite clearly. And let these bands of greenery which ensphere thee drop heavily down. Once again, there's quite sexual imagery there, thinking about dropping things down. The caesura, once again, as what I said up here, it suggests that maybe she's being overwhelmed with the thought. Now, keep the idea of the sexual imagery. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it would seem it would be kind of almost profanity in some ways if a reader was to see this poem in the Victorian era and know that she was a woman. So the pace begins to change. Now, think once again back to this idea of her being kind of sexually in favour of this man. So it goes into an ascendetic list. It goes burst, shattered, everywhere. So the use of the ascendetic listing, it kind of speeds up the pace. It makes it almost, if you look at the syllable count as well, it goes burst, shattered. So 1, 2 syllables, everywhere, 3. So it's almost like, excuse me if it's a bit awkward, but it's a bit like an orgasm, essentially, that has been argued in some of the analysis videos which I have watched. So once again, you have the caesura here, so it's almost like she can't contain herself. She's being overwhelmed through this pleasure of the thought of this man. Because in this deep joy to see and hear thee and breathe within thy shadows a new air, I do not think of thee, I am too near thee. So she says here that she won't have to think of this man once he is finally choosing to be with her. So she's dreaming of the times. Essentially, this man is not with her at the current time. However, she longs for him to be with him forever. She essentially goes through this type of emotion. So here she's like, no, I love him. And then she's like, okay, this is what we need to do in order to make sure that my needs are met. And then she says, you know what, all of me having to think about you would be completely resolved if you were here. Because she's saying, I wouldn't have to think of you because I would be too near you if you were with me. Some of the things which I want to really quickly cover. So the enjambment used, which is the no punctuations on the end of the line, it's the continuation of the line onto the next. This could suggest maybe her overwhelming sense of love and passion for this man. Perhaps it could show their continuation, and regardless of what Victorian rules might have to say about their relationship, or that her father might have to say about their relationship, she has no intention of stopping. She wants to continue. I'll go back to the idea of the feminist poem. So you could say this is a feminist poem because it leaves... the leaves are essentially symbolic representation of her controlling the man, the way that it vines about that tree. So the gender roles are reversed here. So you can mention the way in which, as well, the sonnet form, it's 14 lines. It's not a typical Shakespearean sonnet because that follows a different rhyming pattern. However, you can make an analysis of the fact that it's 14 lines. The fact that it's not the conventional Shakespearean sonnet, it could suggest that maybe their love is timeless. It could suggest that their love is unique, or maybe it breaks the typical rules of and the expectations of society. Obviously, the overwhelming theme of nature. If you've made this link, well done. But Elizabeth Barrett Browning 100% was inspired by romantic poetry. This is the idea that nature overrides all. If we see love as being nature, people could argue differently, but if we could see love as being nature, it's the sense that Elizabeth Browning believed that no matter what rules try and confine or define who she should and should not love, ultimately the nature and her feelings towards this man will remain unchanged. Please let me know if there's things that I have not covered in this video, and leave any comments if you have any feedback. Thank you. Bye.